Hey leaders, in this episode of Leading Collaborative Response, we dive into key issues. Why effectively crafted key issues are absolutely critical when it comes to the collaborative team meeting, a driving vehicle for a school's collaborative response framework. We discuss how getting that key issue to precisely communicate what it is that we are struggling with can make all the difference when it comes to sharing of strategies and determining next steps. Interested in learning more? Check out this episode. Let's get started.
Are you a leader who is navigating the nuances of leading collaborative response in your school or district? Are you unsure of what collaborative response is? Are you looking to understand the critical role leadership plays when establishing and refining a collaborative response approach?
Collaborative response began as a grassroots approach to focus on the needs of students through a framework of collaboration. That approach has grown to a movement that is training leadership and education.
Through the Leading Collaborative Response podcast, Kurtis and I share our own experiences of leading collaborative response and lessons learned as we continue to learn and gain insight through the experiences of working alongside others. We also have the opportunity to engage in conversations with school and divisional leaders implementing the framework in their own organizations.
We know great leaders build great teams because that is what every child deserves. Subscribe to the Leading Collaborative Response podcast and join the thousands of schools seeing success for students through intentional and focused collaborative efforts.
You had talked a little bit about essentially the Goldilocks effect when it comes to establishing a key issue. And that's where we want to go today is how do we establish effective key issues? What do we mean by that Goldilocks effect?
Yeah, so the Goldilocks effect is the too hot, too cold kind of idea, too soft, too hard. Yeah. And that idea that the role of the facilitator is critically important because if that key issue that we're trying to generate for our team is too big, too broad, then we can't actually come down with strategies because it's just way too big a topic.
Just broad strokes. I've seen that where a person will come into the collaborative team meeting and say, I have this student and my key issue is attendance.
Yeah, or reading.
Right. Yeah.
And there's so many, like right away when you think reading, there are so many elements of reading.
Absolutely.
We need to narrow that down. And that's how that facilitator works through that, is narrowing down through questioning. But then there's the other side of it as well, that too cold, is that when we have identified a key issue that is so minute that
specific.
It applies only to one student. And so we have a really hard time identifying other students to attach to that key issue because we're really actually talking about that one student because that key issue is so specific to that individual.
So it's about trying to find, when we think about an effective key issue, that sweet spot that's not too broad, not too minute or specific, that then we can work on. This is one of the reasons why, as a facilitator, I've often shared this strategy that when I ask for a student and a key issue, I'll purposefully say to the recorder, please don't write anything in the key issue spot on the notes document yet. Add the name, but hold, because we might have to work through because of exactly what you're saying. Yeah. And I sometimes find if we don't give that little bit of direction, we could have a recorder that is writing everything that you're sharing as a teacher, and then it does become really hard to link other students to that. I often will say, wait until we get it, and then we'll come back and say, okay, so I think what we have then as a key issue is this. Have we got it? And then we put it into the document.
Yeah, and that agreement from the team by the facilitator saying, okay, now this is the key issue we've arrived at. Are we good with that? And I think that part is important as well, because then the team can be ready to move forward with ideas based on that key issue.
So I think one of the things to reinforce with this is it takes time. It takes practice. You're not going to get the perfect set of key issues.
Oh, and
the
it's
very
not
first time.
even coming to that key issue is not like huge questions that we're asking or lots of detail or anything. Sometimes they're very simple questions like, how often does that happen? Or what time of the day does that happen? And for that student. And you can narrow down a key issue by just very simple questions.
So I think this then definitely alludes to something we share often is whoever is facilitating, that's the only role they're taking.
Yeah.
I'm not facilitating and taking notes or
Too
tracking
hard.
time because I want to be listening intently to help drill down. So obviously, the facilitator in the course of the meeting is important, but there's some things that we can do outside of that meeting to help that as well. I'm thinking of a school that I had talked with that said when we first introduced the collaborative team meeting and the key issue process, our first meeting as admin, we brought the key issue, and it was based entirely on observations we were having or conversations that we were having with teachers to come and say, we've heard from multiple sources that this is a key issue. And then they attached students and then they went through the process, but they started with that to be able to model. And I thought that was a really nice way to be able to scaffold.
Get started.
To scaffold and build the process where it was then their intent to say, okay, now next meeting, you're going to bring a key issue using this pre-meeting organizer.
Along the same lines, we've seen schools who actually send out a Google form as their pre-meeting organizer ahead of time so that they can take a look at the facilitator or admin can take a look at the key issues that are going to come forward to look at some alignment and kind of prepare themselves for that fine-tuning. But knowing that that's only the first step in, again, that scaffolding.
We'll be right back to continue this episode. Have you ever wondered how to make your collaborative team meetings more productive, engaging, and impactful? We know that healthy, well-structured collaborative team meetings are the key to driving innovation and addressing student needs. But there is one essential ingredient that determines their success: effective facilitation. That's where our online course, Facilitating Effective Collaborative Team Meetings, comes in. Designed and facilitated by myself, Kurtis Houston, author of Collaborative Response and co-founder of Jigsaw Learning, this course gives you the tools, strategies, and structures to transform your team meetings from routine discussions into powerful problem-solving sessions. In this course, you'll learn what makes a collaborative team meeting different from traditional student meetings, the structural components needed for effective collaboration, practical facilitation strategies to maximize your team's impact. And the best part, it's self-paced, takes about 3 hours to complete, and you'll receive a certificate of completion to recognize your learning. Consider enrolling yourself or members of your team responsible for facilitating collaborative team meetings. If you're ready to lead collaborative meetings that actually drive change, enroll now. Access the course at jigsawlearning.ca/publications/courses. That's jigsawlearning.ca/publications/courses. Let's make every meeting count. And now back to our conversation. I'm imagining as a leader, if I saw something come forward that wasn't in that sweet spot, it may give me the opportunity to go and chat with that person ahead of time to say, let's just refine this a little bit before we get into the team meeting. One of the other things that we've seen on that pre-meeting organizer then as well is schools that have put criteria right at the top that say, for instance, ensure that the key issue being brought is within our locus of control. So we do have a locus of control activity that's found within the book. We also have a blog posting. We'll link the blog posting in because that can be a really valuable process to work through with the staff, because you really do want the key issues that are being brought forward to be things that we can have direct impact on.
for us over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we get that opportunity to be able to work through that activity of locus of control, you identify the things that are getting in the way, and then you determine whether they're within our control, outside of our control, or we can influence them. When you've had that conversation with your staff, it really empowers us to let go of the things that we really can't control and to focus in on what we can do. And that becomes incredibly impactful in our brainstorming for key issues.
You know, I'm reminded of our conversation that we had with Carrie Huck,
a
principal in a recent podcast. It's with Carrie Huck from Woodbridge Farms Elementary, where she talked about how that had been really powerful in the school of trying to let go, as hard as it is, the things outside of our locus of control, and how meaningful it can be when we just are trying to concentrate on what's within our locus of control.
And that discussion between staff becomes quite impactful too.
So you did have an experience prior to Christmas of meeting with a school that had shared something very unique on how they were helping their team to develop more effective key issues over time.
Yeah,
as well.
So we've talked quite a bit about establishing that effective key issue and how tricky it is to find that sweet spot of a key issue. And in this particular school, the leaders serve in the role of facilitation sometimes, but they also have a lead team that does the same work with the multiple teams that are in their school. And they decided that it would be a great activity for them to be able to really explore, how do we get to that, how do we narrow down those key issues? And so what this principal did was design stories, what he called stories.
Yeah.
And
they were just
scenarios. Scenarios of students, of things that are happening within the classroom. And then went on to encourage the staff to say, okay, so what is the key issue here?
So it was a whole staff activity.
A whole staff. So everyone was involved. And I like that because then everyone understands how we're trying to get to that key issue and what a good key issue is. So being able to just generate that story and then talk about, okay, what is the key issue here? But I would even say that multiple key issues would come out of some of those stories, depending on the questions and depending on the situation.
Absolutely. So we've also seen schools where they felt like maybe the key issues were needing a little more refinement or not being generated from the data that we have. So one of the resources, and we'll link it in, that we've used recently is a pre-meeting organizer, but with simple close statements that say, I've brought X student. When I reviewed this data, I noted the key issue was, and it was almost like prompts. We'll share that. But then we've also seen schools that have asked that their teachers review their data, and as they're doing that collectively, let's note all the key issues that we are seeing when students are engaging in this particular assessment tool or in this particular screener, and then created what we've come to just call cheat sheets. Cheat sheets of here's all the literacy key issues that we see. Or I'm thinking of a school where they were looking at relationships, referring to it as connectivity for students, and listed all the connectivity key issues. We'll link an example from two different schools that did just that, a literacy key issue sheet and a connectivity key issue sheet, which again becomes really powerful. I could see a situation where if we're in a team meeting and we're having trouble narrowing down, where I could say, Lorna, could you take a look at the key issues list that we have? And if you could pick one thing off that for us to be able to focus on for the student that you've brought, what would it be? Again, powerful resource that you can utilize.
Yeah, and really it is those experiences that we create for staff to engage in that key issue process that just gets better and better every time.
So we also do have one other resource, and we'll link that in as well, which is a Digging into Key Issues organizer. It's one we've used with several staff teams where especially when it came to key issues related to behavior.
Yeah.
Being able to take, this is what I'm observing, but then why do I think that's happening? And
what's behind?
And it's just a way to really get down to the root key issue, not just what I'm experiencing or observing on a day-to-day basis.
Which is really critical when we talk about behavior, knowing that behavior is only communication of a greater issue that's behind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So once again, we'd love to hear examples or different ways that you've gone about really reinforcing that key issue process, which we know is critical in the collaborative team meeting. Would love to hear some examples. And with that, we thank you once again for the time to be able to share and really, through these reflections, share out the great work that we're seeing happening in schools and divisions across our educational landscape. So with that, take care and all the best.
See you soon.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity in leading collaborative response in your context.